So what exactly did Gala Games share on its live stream during the Mirandus server stress test? I've distilled the entire stream down into what matters most. We'll explore what we learned and what we might expect going forward. Let's dig in. Welcome to Mirandus Life. I'm Jesse, and today we're talking about the Mirandus server stress test. Now, if you are new to this channel is 100% pure Mirandus, so if you're excited about this game and you want to stay up to date on development progress and other things that we learn along the way, you're going to want to subscribe to this channel. And you're also going to want to jab that notification bell so that you don't miss each and every video that is shared. So we just had a server test. On July 3rd, Gala Games opened up a test server to the Gala Games community. About 100 people were able to log in. Now, of course, this slice of the test environment was super basic and barren, not much to see except for the fact that you could log in and you could see one land deed. Now, while it wasn't specifically called out as an outpost, the land deed matches exactly the description of an outpost. Okay, so in this first shot, we're looking across a valley, and this valley has bluffs with plateaus in the background, and there are clouds in the sky, and you can see that these clouds are in fact casting shadows. We can also see that the landscape is dotted with avatars, which at this point is interesting that you can see a person that far away across the landscape. Now, the center focus of this shot is a land deed, the sole land deed that sits here within this zone. I believe this is a complete zone. At this time, zones are 1 kilometer square. McCarthy has mentioned that he would like to see this expanded to 3 kilometers square, believing that that is a more appropriate size for a zone. Now in this next shot, we're zoomed in quite a bit more, and we can see in fact that this land deed is an outpost. It has a modest fence, which is really not any form of fortification, so hopefully that can be something that you can upgrade. All of the buildings here are placeholders except for one, and that is the building that we see there with the green roof. And believe it or not, that green roof represents a 5x5 stand. If we look at the land deed from another perspective on the opposite side, we can see the 10x20 large building there. That is the home of the deed owner. And we can also see that there's a number of other buildings. Now, as a point of reference, this is the top-down view and the layout of an outpost. We can see here that it does have the 10x20 home of the deed owner, which is the largest building plot. On either side of that building plot, there are 2 5x5 farming plots for a total of 4. There are also 4 small plots that are 5x5 and 1 10x10 medium building plot. There's also 4 decorative installations. However, when we look at the land deed within the test server environment, the only things that are missing are 2 of the farming plots on one side of the deed owner's home and the 2 attached decorative pieces to the deed owner's home, those 2 blue there. Otherwise, everything else is exactly as we see here in this layout. Let's take a closer look. From this angle here, we're sitting in the lower left corner of the deed, looking at 2 of the farming plots that sit next to the deed owner's home. We can also see a closer shot of that 5x5 building with the green roof, and as we'll see later, that is most likely a simple forge. If we jump up to the top of the deed owner's home and look at a top-down view, we can now see more of the other buildings. Across the way there, we see a 10x10 building plot, and next to it, a 5x5 building plot. We also see 3 avatars over there on another 5x5 building plot, just on the other side of this green roofed 5x5 building plot. There is only one that we cannot see that's out of view in between those 2 5x5s. If we move over to the other side of the deed owner's home, now we can see all of the other building plots. We see those 3 avatars on that far 5x5. We can see that there is another 5x5 in the middle there between the 5x5 with the avatars on top and the 5x5 that is fully decked out with a green roof. And then we see the 10x10 and the 5x5. So what we're looking at here represents all of the buildings of an outpost. The only thing that we can't see here in this shot are the total of 4 farming plots, 2 on either side of the deed owner's home. Now, if we look at that 5x5, we can see here that it is most likely a simple forge. It looks like a kiln of some sort there for creating lots of heat. we can see that there are 2 workbenches. And now, also, it's interesting to point out that the shot that we saw in the blog post was, in fact, this simple forge. We just couldn't tell from this shot, but walking around the world, that's absolutely what it was. Here's 2 more shots of that simple forge at night, the 2 workbenches in the kiln, and here's another angle that shows you could probably put like a battle axe or a shield or something interesting on the wall. Be curious to know how much you can decorate these. But here's what's really cool. Imagine that you are someone who had a modest budget, you've got an avatar, and you bought yourself a milking stand, some small meat stand or a simple forge, something like that, a potion stand. This is what your shop would look like. It's a little bigger than what I think a lot of people imagine a 5x5, because in most cases people are thinking 5x5 feet, but this is actually 5 meters square. So that's essentially going to be about 15 feet by 15 feet. And there you have it. I'd like to see next time perhaps the full decked out 10 by 10, maybe a larger building, perhaps even a larger D, just to see what it actually looks like. And this final shot just shows some avatars leaving the outpost, going back into the unknown. This here is just an open barren valley. In the next server tests, we will actually have our own avatars, our own exemplar. So going forward, if you want to participate in these tests, you're going to have an exemplar avatar, and you're going to have to be Gala Gold. Now let's go ahead and jump into that bullet point recap of all of the important things mentioned during this live stream. The live stream began with a technical introduction by Michael McCarthy. He went on to share how they're using the Unity platform, creating the 3D world there, and then pushing what they've developed onto the multiplayer server that sits on Amazon. Now, we also, all of us that were to participate in this test, downloaded a small client that allowed us to connect to that multiplayer server. Now, as has already been mentioned, it was quite barren. The only things that were there was one land deed that we could jump around, walk around, navigate. We could see the day and night cycle. Now, this test was basically a performance test. How many people could log on before we would start to see the quality of the experience degrade?
I think it's really fun for us as developers to just have everybody here and along for the ride. And there's a lot of things you have to do when you're making a game that are not necessarily glamorous. So, this build today, this is as ugly as it gets. Internally and as developers, we celebrate a lot of technical wins to get something like this working.
Now, the next thing that McCarthy talked about is why he has not been able to engage the community the way that he would like to.
Again, guys, I'm always torn between getting you guys cool stuff and engaging with you heavily versus going heads down with the team and trying to get as much progress forward as we can. So as the team scales, we'll be able to do a little bit more of both. But right now there's just a lot of foundational work, and I need to be really involved with the other leads of the team to kind of get it there and stood up.
Now, the next thing that McCarthy talked about was the avatar view. Obviously, the avatar view that we saw through this test environment had fragments of the avatar image in front of us. And that just was simply the result of camera placement that would be hidden from view within the game. And you would most likely see a different set of hands, including a sword and a shield, very much like the image of the Minotaur King room where you did see a first-person shot several months back. The next thing that was talked about was zone size. At the moment, it is thought that zones are to be 1 kilometer square. However, McCarthy believes this to be too small and is probably looking to move to 3 kilometers square for a zone. What we don't know yet is how many zones there will be in a game, how many zones there will be in a kingdom. It was also talked about that one of the next development milestones that they are after is reaching a peak of 500 people within a zone.
The promise that I think we've made to you, and I think our goal really is that there are certainly 500 people in one area. That's what we really want. And a lot of that is born of the citadels and larger cities. It's just if there's a cool event happening in a zone, we got to have at least 500 people be able to be there in that zone. And, as we scale and we get super, mega, ultra, more rock star engineers, they'll probably be able to help us with that number. But we really are trying to make it that within view at one time, you are seeing hundreds of people, because that's really cool to see.
API integration was talked about as the next likely step for moving into the next server test. What does this mean? This means that through the application programming interface that the development team for Gala Games is going to connect Mirandus to our Gala Wallets. Now this also means that going forward, it's going to require an exemplar avatar to participate in these tests. So there's a couple of qualifications now. 1, you must have your exemplar avatar. 2, you must be a Gala Gold member. And 3, you must be able to download a client for a Windows PC. Now, if you do have Mac, you are able to, of course, use Boot Camp, install Windows, and you will be able to log in just fine. That way, I did test this on this last server test. Something else that we'll be able to look forward to going into the next server test is the connection of avatar conditions to our avatar.
Next build that comes out, you'll likely be able to hurt yourself. And then if you were to log out and log back in, the amount of hit points you had will be retained. There's a lot you need to stand up to get all that working and humming along, so.
Now, the next thing that was mentioned is that living AI is going to be worked on throughout the month of July, and perhaps we'll see that in the next or the following server test.
The next big step technically for us guys, is you'll notice the world is barren, and then there's avatars that can jump in. Those avatars are you. The next big step is to have NPCs in the world, and not NPCs like, oh, there's a shopkeeper or something. Anything that is alive with logic running on it, like a wolf or a tree growing and dying, that is not held on your client. That needs to be held on the server, and then its state communicated out to all of your clients. And that's kind of the next big step for us, and that's what we're entering into here in July. So we'll get the API integration. You're definitely going to want an exemplar for the next executable, and we're going to try to get things living in the environment and have that be synced so that we're all seeing a tree live and die at the same time.
McCarthy says that all of these things essentially function the same with the in-game AI, just that a tree isn't moving while a wolf is. So those are some things we have to look forward to in the upcoming tests. Now, something else that was mentioned is that they're looking to get as many things on chain within the game as possible.
You know what's really cool about the tree thing that you just talked about? I think it ties into the question of how you're going to play to earn in a game like this.
Yeah.
Because, if you're that guy who's chopping down trees around Mirandus and turning that into something with a Gala chain, the way we're designing it, those pieces of lumber are going to be on chain.
I think the intention is that the entire game, to the best of our ability, is on chain. There'll be this economy inside the game, and there'll be this economy that's happening out there in the secondary market that we just can't control because it's not ours. We're a decentralized network.
Now, something else that you mentioned in the same thread was that unlike many other MMORPGs where it is somewhat discouraged for guilds and individuals to become financially dominant within the game.
So it'll be fascinating to see what people do with it. But I think practices that are discouraged in other games are practices that we would encourage here. I want people in the game being industrious and getting entire guilds together to try to build something which has an extremely high value. I think that's fun and exciting.
So what exactly does that mean? And a lot of us that have guilds are wondering very much, what is that going to be like? Is there going to be a great guild interface? Is there going to be a great way to show your guild colors and fly your guild flag and have people have guild titles? Don't know, but I think that really should be a great part of the game, and I hope that Gala does as well. The next thing that McCarthy emphasized is death, and that death is going to be a very significant part of the game. And that should you die, there should be some significant consequences. Now, of course, they can't burn your NFT, or can they? They actually can if, say, for instance, you were to enter this particular dungeon that has this particular loot or promise of riches. You may have to push a button that says you are signing a contract that if your avatar dies, it permanently dies and your NFT is burned. So there are some ways that they can do this, but it's going to be done with your acknowledgement and your agreement.
If there's one thing that just lives in my mind all the time. It's what does death mean in Mirandus? I mean, we obviously cannot burn your token, you know, unless you signed a smart contract, which we've talked about for 2 avatars enter, sign a smart contract to say, if you lose this battle, your token is destroyed and burned. I mean, I would pay a Coliseum owner to watch those one-on-ones.
Other things that could be done if you weren't fighting to the death is you could put up a certain amount of in-game currency. But death overall is going to be significant, and there's going to be a risk-reward factor. Another key thing that McCarthy talked about is nighttime and what I'm calling into the dark, because he gave some stories as growing up as a kid, going out camping, being something like 8 years old, getting lost, but then being able to see the campfire where all the people were and then having that feeling of relief. He wants to inject that into the game. There's going to be lots of nocturnal activity, creatures that only come out at night. It's going to be very unsafe at night, and he keeps emphasizing this. And one of the things that stood out more than anything else during this server test was night and day cycle. It was beautiful, it was captivating, and you can get a sense for what it might be like traveling in the dark places. Now, another thing that was mentioned throughout, and I already talked about this briefly, and it really falls into this category though, and that is the hero risk and reward.
How cool is it if you're exploring, or it's just such a common explorer story to be on a canoe down a dark river? If you die in this world, it's gonna be a big deal. So players that gear up and get on that canoe and head down that creek that everyone says don't go down because something's down there. We don't know what it is, but Jimmy went out there and didn't come back. That's exciting. That's going to make the people that are explorers and that get out there in the world, that's going to make it a big deal. I really think for us to create this Ready Player One medieval world, that a hero should be a huge deal. People should know their names in the realm. So if you are able to get out there and adventure and go into a dungeon and not know what's in there, how do you approach that dungeon? You know, if you can make it through that and level through that and get that gear, and or if you're into commerce and you run your city a certain way, or you craft amazing things, you know, whatever made you get to an extremely high level, it needs to be something that the other players are like, damn homie, that's insane. Because if it's just, oh, you've obviously been playing a long time, that's not really meaningful. So the world needs to have a significant amount of risk in it, especially if you're just pointing that way and saying, I'm going to go walk over there.
There is going to be lots of unknown. So there is going to be a definite factor of risk and reward for the heroes of Mirandus. Another interesting tidbit that was dropped is that Eric Schiermeyer hinted towards perhaps stashing lots of gold in different places randomly throughout the world. Maybe at the bottom of a lake, maybe deep down in a dungeon, but have these places where you might stumble upon the equivalent of $1,000 in whatever the in-game currency might be.
I don't know about you, Michael, but I always had this thought, this imagining really, that we would actually distribute treasure throughout Mirandus for players to find. We could do fun things like throw a couple $1,000s worth of Gala at the bottom of a layer too.
And I love how they talk about charting the unknown, meaning that Gala Games isn't going to reveal a map of the land like a lot of games do. They're not even going to provide screenshots. Obviously, players will do that, but it's going to really be up to the community and the players individually to discover the world of Mirandus as they go, rather than simply being able to look up on the Gala site and say, oh, this is the kingdom and here's where I want to go next.
Normally in an MMO or something, it's like you go to the website and, oh, here's the continent, and you know, over here where this lives and that, you know, kind of like shows you everything that's in the world prior to you even playing the game. It almost ruins them. I'm wondering if there's a way that we can just keep the world of Mirandus a mystery for players to solve. That, you know, you would never see a screen, you know, like we would never post a screenshot of a cool new area. It'd be a player that would have to go there and discover that area. I kind of like the idea that no one knows what's out there, and the players get to run around and discover it, which would be pretty rad.
This is going to be a place that you have to discover on your own. Where this is going to get interesting then is, as a deed owner, how are you going to let the community or the world at large know how to find your land deed and therefore your businesses? So that's going to be an interesting consideration as the world of Mirandus opens up. Now, another big nugget of intel during this live stream was that Seafaring is going to be something within the world of Mirandus. There's most likely going to be ships for travel.
Do those boats actually work?
If what we're saying is that Mirandus is this unknown world and players will explore and settle there, and I just don't see how we can avoid having some nautical business. I like the idea that you could have a boat, it can hold a certain number of people and cargo, and you can choose destinations.
And it was also hinted on the same live stream that perhaps in the next and final reveal of exemplar avatars that we may be seeing an avatar or two related to the sea.
There is a tier 5 exemplar that has some powers that are related to this image.
So all in all, expect seafaring, expect boats, expect ports. We don't know if these ports are going to be buildings or if they're going to be sea deeds or how it will all work, but we do know that there will be sea travel. Another interesting bit that was discussed, Eric Schiermeyer would like to have a Mage Tower.
Well, I can say already that I'm looking forward to figuring out a way to build a Mage Tower, and one of the few in the land.
Yeah, I think we need those central archives of knowledge or power or training of some kind, you know. I love the story of I had to go to or adventure to or travel to this faraway place where certain knowledge or power could be bestowed upon me, you know. That's a fantasy story, right? A journey somewhere to. So I think if we do Mirandus right, it's going to be a series, you know, it'll feel like you're inside a fantasy novel. You know?
Now this is exciting because he went on to further talk about how questing for knowledge will be a thing, that he wants it to be the feel of you went down a long road, you went on a quest, kind of like Lord of the Rings, you went somewhere to do something to gain this knowledge or to complete a task. So that's going to be exciting, and Eric, I would love to see that Mage Tower for sure. Now, and finally in discussion was in-game currency, and this is a tricky one because they talked a bit about potentially having Gala as the in-game currency.
So I kind of like the idea that Gala could be expressed like 1 Gala would equal 1 gold, and 0.5 of a Gala could be a silver, but there would be some direct relationship of the currency inside of the game to the Gala coin. It would just be a way to express how much Gala you're about to spend in-game for a transaction. I can't get the thought out of my head that there's something really elegant and simple about me having Gala and going into a game and using my Gala.
I think that's a horrible idea, simply because the last thing we want within the world of Mirandus is to have external influences changing the in-game economy. People deciding to hold out on selling goods and services within Mirandus because they're waiting on changes with this Gala utility coin. So absolutely Mirandus should have its own in-game currency. How will that currency work? I've seen a number of people discussing it, even in the comments here on this channel. Lots of great suggestions and things that make a lot of sense, but I'm really looking forward to see what Gala does with it. Having this traditional copper, silver, gold, platinum, I think is a fantastic idea, and I hope that that is what lands within the game. Well, there you go. That was all of the real juicy stuff that was shared, every last bit of it. There really was nothing else that stood far out of these things during the Mirandus server test. However, we will be going into detail with each one of these. This is the bullet point for discussion for this week's The Mirandus Gentry, our live stream that takes place this Sunday. It's going to take place on Sunday at 10 a.m. on the West Coast in the United States, 1 p.m. on the East Coast, and 7 p.m. in Central Europe. So if you want to join us for that live, this is what we'll be discussing. So if you just are interested in the Cliff Notes, that's it. That's really all that was covered. I scoured the whole thing. But these are good talking points, and so we're going to be discussing this on Sunday. You can participate as well. We do watch for comments, we pull comments in, we pull questions in, so that we can all collectively have a discussion. And truly that is the point of the Mirandus Gentry, our weekly live stream. I do this show with 5 others, and we'll be rotating in guests as well. Now, the purpose is so that we have a place for dialogue and just wishcrafting and thinking about how we think things might be in the world of Mirandus and what we think about the development journey. So again, these are our bullet points. This is what we'll be discussing. I certainly hope that you'll join us this weekend. Now, a few closing thoughts. A lot of what happens within the Gala Discord is kind of fluffy, in my personal opinion, which is why a lot of us have things like this live stream podcast that we do, so that we can actually have conversations about the things we'd love to be having, these same conversations with the developers. But this opportunity has not really been made available to us. We stacked up a lot of questions that we brought to what was supposed to be an AMA this past week during the server test. It really never was an AMA. None of our questions got answered. Hopefully that does happen soon. That is what I wish for more than anything else, is the development team all of a sudden to say, hey, we are now ready to start building this together with the community. That's all I have for this video. Be sure to join us this weekend on Sunday for the live stream. I'd love to see you participate in that. So either until the live stream or until the very next video that I drop here, Jesse out.